Well, welcome to Legal AF and Court Accountability Action. We are about to talk about one of your favorite, not so favorite characters in the law, Samuel Alito. There's a lot of speculation going on right now because of the results from last Tuesday on whether Sam Alito will stay on the Supreme Court or not. There's been a lot of movement in the public domain, in essence, about that. And Alex, I'd love to get your thoughts on what you're hearing, what you're seeing, and what you're thinking about the situation that has come up with Sam Alito.
Sure, great to be with you, Lisa. Well, we just saw in the Wall Street Journal today. There's some new press. Apparently, Alito has been talking. It's so rich and ironic. That it's such a coincidence, really, that it's the Wall Street Journal that has the scoop on the intel on Alito's plans to retire. The early word is that quote, despite what some people may think, this is a man who has never thought about his job from a political perspective. The idea that he is going to retire for political considerations is not consistent with who he is. That's from one person close to Alito. So, I wanted to dig into this because, of course, we know this is like, a lot of folks have been anticipating his retirement. There was that leaked recording of his wife, Martha Ann Alito, who was, clearly itching for his quote unquote liberation when she would be free to fly her flags,
Her Bergonia
uh,
flag of
her
flames of
shame
shame.
flags at her
Yeah, yeah.
LGBTQ plus neighbors. And so I think there's some sort of surprise in our community about the notion that he wouldn't just immediately step down. I'm not super surprised sort of right off the bat. But do you have any thoughts, Lisa?
I'm really surprised to see the Wall Street Journal reporting what really sounds like a work of fiction, because the idea that Sam Alito is not a political guy is basically about as far from the truth as I can imagine based on his actual behavior. Just read his opinion in Dobbs. It reads like he's actually writing for the Wall Street Journal editorial page, not from the bench, not as a judge. I'll leave aside for the most part him citing witch hunters from the medieval era. But Sam Alito is a political creature. He did a very political victory tour after Dobbs, and he's someone, as you point out, who his wife told Lauren Windsor in her undercover investigation of at the Spring Springhorn Historical Society that she was looking forward, it's seemingly very soon, to being free of the constraints, whatever constraints she seems to have, but the constraints on flying offensive flags against her neighbors who dare to be, gay and want to have, marriage equality or something. But Alito is someone who we now know from a lot of investigative reporting is someone who has a real penchant for luxury and power and posh places. And he's someone who has accepted this knighthood recent that was recently reported on, where he got a fabulous gilt sword, or fabulous sword and cape. He's someone who stayed at the castle of a so-called princess in the non-royal state of Germany, who invited him to her castle to see a concert. He's someone who has been a frequent flyer at Federal Society events. So I guess I would say, at the bottom line, I'm deeply skeptical of the reporting that he's A, not political, and B, not considering whether to cash out or not. The only thing I would say is I think he's so vain, so egotistical, so into the power trip that he's on in terms of destroying people's rights, that I think he would stay just to take the credit for the next round of restricting the rights of Americans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think very clearly this idea that he has never thought about his job from a political perspective, it's like it's laughable on its face. But I think what it does, it's sort of like just classic projection. It's because he's so political that I think it is likely that he'll stick around. We had a colleague say, actually, I think he's going to go. His job here is done. Dobbs. How could you top Dobbs? He did Dobbs, and did the deed. But I don't think he thinks of his work as done at all. I think that this agenda is so much farther reaching, particularly around some of the stuff we know he cares the most about. You mentioned the knighthood he took. He seems to very clearly, and I wrote with our friend Katie Chenoweth, the Princeton professor in Slate recently, about what seems to be his full-throated ideological embrace of the idea of monarchy. We're in this moment where on the new right, the crowd that JD Vance hangs with, this idea of kind of the greatness of a monarchical system of government is very much ascendant, and Alito seems completely bought into that based on these associations and based on his involvement in some of these cases like Trump versus the United States, which is the first step on a road to American monarchy. And then, of course, his religious agenda. I think, as we've discussed on this show, they certainly don't have any plans to stop the war on women with Dobbs. I think
No,
he very much sees, opportunity for advancement of ideas like fetal personhood, which is,
which you also
his
wrote
Dobbs
about.
opinion is. What'd
Yeah,
you say? Yeah, yeah,
which
yeah.
you also
But
wrote about. Yeah.
but that opinion in Dobbs is just full of these dog whistles about the desire to move toward the idea that the 14th Amendment protects fetal personhood. I think he wants to be part of that, right? These are like his glory years, and he's relatively insulated. He's got, at the very least 2 years before there's any threat at all that Democrats could regain control of the Senate. I don't think there's anybody that's looking at the Senate maps in 2026 and seeing a particularly plausible path for Democrats to retake the Senate that year. And so, what's he got to lose? Make Martha Ann keep her flags in the closet for a couple more years, and then now as he ascends to the kind of the center of power in the court's majority, really start running roughshod over rights and freedoms.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to pause or underscore that note of the monarchy because I literally never thought it wasn't on my bingo card for America in 2024 or really any other year that you would have people in positions of great power who have basically embraced this idea that the president should be king. Certainly, we saw that in that decision this summer that John Roberts wrote and Sam Alito signed on to, which destroyed a core component of our constitution, which is the notion that the president, his job is a duty to execute the laws faithfully, and the opposite of that is breaking them. And the other, I guess, corollary of that is a court that basically pre-pardons him by preventing him from being held accountable for the crimes he committed and for future crimes. And Alito signed on to that, and then has been rubbing shoulders with these the faux princess in Germany, who's someone who has been really praising Putin and Russia as an sort of an ideal, but also really hearkening back to this idea that we really need to have a monarchy in all key nations, because that's the really only way to have civil control or to advance, in essence, her religious agenda, which is also this fetal personhood, this objection to people having basically having access to birth control and determining when or if they're going to have kids. But then you have this other fusion where, now you have Trump, who's been basically blessed, endorsed, uh, moved forward by some tech billionaires who also have a very monarchical view of society and who have been openly disdainful of democracy, like Peter Thiel and others. And so, to have these two forces coming together, these religious monarchists, or actually three forces: religious monarchists, political monarchists, and economic monarchists, really backing Trump in different ways. It's something I don't think our founding fathers or the founding generation or the revolutionaries who wrote that Declaration of Independence could have imagined that we would find ourselves here 250 years into this experiment and have these forces come together, including by a sitting Supreme Court justice, and more than one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think thinking about this, like obviously it's not great news to that we're going to continue to like live in Sam Alito's world for the foreseeable future. I think if we could, wave a wand and have him off the court tomorrow, we would love to do that. But I think it's worth exploring some of the upsides here, right? And some of the other reasons he might want to stick around, particularly as lower court judges, folks like James Ho, the former Clarence Thomas clerk, Andy Oldham, another judge down on the Fifth Circuit who used to clerk for Sam Alito, are really trying to audition for elevation to his seat when he does ultimately step down. I'm sure he'll want to play Alito himself will want to play a guiding role in selecting his own replacement, but maybe they want to see more from these judges in terms of like what kind of justices they would be. Which and I think the other thing is, so that I think on one level gives us time to better understand, to better help more people understand just what's going on as judges like Alito, his minions and proteges, develop these records inimical to democracy itself and deeply unpopular in their outcomes, to make a stronger case against an eventual nominee down the road. And then just sort of like superficially but importantly, Alito has disqualified himself, right? Like he was waving these MAGA flags while he's sitting on the insurrection cases. Of course, he has not been meaningfully held to account to this, but he has emerged alongside Clarence Thomas, who is much more publicly known, as a really valuable villain. I mean, this guy is the manifestation of disdain for the rule of law, for the idea that judges should be fair and impartial. And for too long, this majority has been cloaked and shrouded in the legitimacy provided by the mythologies we've built around the judicial function, around the Supreme Court. And as he continues to wield his power in such unpopular and damaging ways, I think it provides a window of opportunity for us to tell this story, build more movement, energy, and power to confront it.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, I guess there's a strange benefit in him having no shame. He's used the Wall Street Journal editorial page to try to defend the indefensible, like that he didn't have to disclose a private jet flight because he just happened to be at the airport at the private jet area where, the billionaire Paul Singer's jet was for the trip that he was going on with Paul Singer to the resort that they were going to go hang out at in Alaska. And the seat happened to be empty. And so he just hopped aboard. How dare he leave that seat? No seat shall go unfilled, in essence, by Sam Alito. But that trip was, organized by Leonard Leo. He was there too. There's just this whole extraordinary sets of number of scandals actually that Alito has been involved in. And, if this were, a Democratic environment, people would be calling it in his own party would be calling on him to resign. Just like, we've seen, I don't have to go through the list, but like when there've been allegations, Al Franken, like, pushed out of that role to resign. Instead, what's happened, what was extraordinary, even though I don't have a lot of confidence in those Senate Republicans on the judiciary, they're basically ringers, but like they defended Alito. They defended Thomas despite just the grotesqueness of their behavior, including the more than $4 million worth of gifts that Clarence Thomas has taken. And so, in a normal political environment, those sorts of things would be disqualifying. There would be a fear of impeachment or at least embarrassment, causing harm to the agenda in terms of moving that agenda forward. But basically, they just double down and say, I'm not moving, and I'm here to basically move this political agenda forward through the courts, because the court isn't acting like a court, an independent body that cares about integrity or public confidence in its judgments. It's operating as if it's sort of like a star chamber to move forward this extreme right-wing agenda, whether we like it or not. And so they really have to be held accountable. That's why we need to continue to work to hold them accountable and build the case for when there is power to do so, which is why I'm so excited to always to be working with you, Alex, because that's, our core mission. But like, we can't give up just because of what happened last week. This is at the heart of our democracy, because Sam Alito isn't just, breaking the ethical rules on recusal. He's breaking our freedoms due to his extremism and his agenda.
Thanks, Lisa. And one thing that strikes me is they didn't have to defend it enough, right? The
Yeah.
case was not prosecuted nearly hard enough against this historic, unprecedented corruption of our justice system by these individuals like Alito and Thomas. And Democrats didn't put up enough of a fight. When the Senate Judiciary Committee and Dick Durbin invited John Roberts just to testify, they invited him. They didn't subpoena him. And Roberts asserted completely um, unsupported claims of separation of powers, immunity effectively from judicial oversight for the justices. He just sort of accepted it. Durbin just sort of accepted it. And he not only sort of allowed this transparent, egregious abuse of power to go unaccounted for, right, to go forward without any accountability. They left points on the table. This is not popular stuff. As more and more Americans learn about this corruption, about the ways in which the court is wielding power to accumulate more wealth for the already incredibly wealthy billionaires that put them on the bench, people don't like this stuff. They want accountability. They want reform. And there's a huge winning argument to be had in there. And there's a political price to be paid for the politicians that are so shameless as to defend it. So
Yeah, and
that's I think, like, building real momentum around those types of politics over the next few years can be super essential.
yeah, I think that's right. And I know I certainly am down with the desire to tune out certain voices like, Trump's, maniacal claims on a daily, hourly basis that we're seeing. But please don't tune out on our democracy. Please don't tune out on our freedoms. We have to keep watch. We have to push back. And so, I know as these weeks unfurl in these between now and the inauguration and beyond, we're going to be talking about different things people can do. I think, one of the things that people can do, and you may have some other ideas as well, Alex, but like, we need to keep the feet to the fire of the Democrats to stand up, to be strong, and not just throw in the towel, because it's not about, like, the pleasantness of hanging out with those senators. It's about our democracy. It's about our freedoms, and it's about reforming this court, which absolutely needs to be reformed regardless of what just happened. It only, in fact, makes the case stronger because the court played such a central role in helping to deliver the presidency to Trump by blocking lower court efforts to hold him accountable.
Amen. All right, Lisa. Well, it has been a pleasure. Until next time, don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Join us here for more on Midas Touch Legal AF with court accountability. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.